What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Wundercast. It's been a little bit since I've had a guest on the show. We took a little bit of a break between, I guess, what is technically season 3 and now season 4. And last episode was the episode of all the Wundertre team, but this is the first one with the guest. I'm sitting here with Russell McGuire with Exit Realty of Lubbock. Russell used to be my broker back in the day before I started Wundertre. So shout out to him for putting up with me when I was 19 and 20. But I'm excited to have him on the show, kind of pick his brain a little bit about real estate, pick his brain a little bit about growing a real estate agency, and just all that fun stuff. So first off, thank you, Russell, for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so as I do with every guest that's on the show, I would like to just start off with giving you a couple of minutes to talk to us about who is Russell McGuire. How did you get here? What are you doing? All that fun stuff.
Sure. I had to say, first off, I've got an amazing family. I've been married to my wife since 2004, so we're starting to become an older married couple here, coming up on 20 years here. Soon we got 3 boys, 15, 12, and 10 that been really amazing for us. And then a couple years ago, we had the opportunity to adopt a daughter from China internationally, and she's about to turn 8. So that's been a lot of fun, adding her and watching our boys relate to her.
Sure.
Stuff. So like you said, I'm in the real estate business. I've done that since 2002. So for most of my working career, worked in real estate and worked with my dad. He's the other broker and owner. He's semi-retired now and slowing down a little bit, doing some fun things. He and my mom, and enjoying life, but he still comes in a lot, and we've had a lot of fun building a business together.
Sure. Well, you say semi-retired, but knowing Gene, that means that means one day less a week, right? Or an afternoon. Nah, that's awesome. Well, yeah. So let's just go ahead and let's just talk right about that. You've got a unique opportunity that you've had to be able to build a business with a family member. Not a lot of people have that dynamic, and frankly, sometimes it's not a great dynamic, right? Like it's, I certainly wouldn't want to do something with my family, but it's awesome that you are able to do that. Can you kind of talk to me a little bit about what it's like to be in business with your dad and how y'all kind of manage that relationship, that father-son tension, but then also the business partner tension and just kind of what that's like?
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a learning curve. So I think it's like any partnership, even like a marriage, everybody figures out what's my role, what are my strengths, weaknesses, and there's some trial and error in that too. But it's really been a blessing. I've learned so much from my dad. He has always been an entrepreneur, always been self-employed all of my life. He was a farmer when I was a little kid, and then got into selling some agriculture-related sales and things before he and I went into real estate together. And it's been interesting. I can't say it's always easy every day. Sure. There's times we have different opinions and things, but over the years we've more clearly maybe figured out what's important, what's not. And I think both of us would try to be quick to defer to the other person if they had too strong of an opinion. There's probably not that many non-negotiable things that we just have to say it's just my way on something. But
that's good.
But I definitely learned a whole lot from him, and even in the last few years, is he's really stepped back more. Even that's been a transition. So okay, let me take on more of the things he's been doing, and but still he has a real advisory role for us to. He's good at seeing the big picture and stepping back. How are we doing on this? And what he really enjoys is watching people build their careers, the agents that work with us, and helping them and make sure they have the guidance they need as I'm maybe working more within the business and trying to keep it going.
Nice. Well, as long as you can avoid awkward Thanksgivings, right? Where there's that tension in the room, that's the goal. So that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about prior to you having Exit, you were just an agent working at a local brokerage. Talk to me a little bit about that time and what made you transition from being that more of the agent salesperson to being more of the broker, owner, manager.
Yeah, sure. Well, and give you my history. I worked in corporate America out of college for about 4 years, and just never saw a big future in that. So I was talking to my dad one day, and he said, I was living in the Dallas area, and he said, well, if you want to try real estate, he said, I'm going to have to do something different too. Just to get out of the agriculture stuff. He was on the road all the time. And he said, we could try real estate, but you'd have to move to Lubbock, which was the furthest thing from my mind at the time.
Yeah.
But it was one of those few moments of clarity where I really knew the Lord was saying, "Hey, man, that's for you. That's where you're supposed to be." So I'm like, okay, and I started getting the license. I packed up and moved to Lubbock, but we actually started a small independent brokerage in the beginning. My dad had enough years that he'd been licensed before, even though he hadn't really worked in the industry much, to get his broker's license. We just started a small mom and pop shop, and so we did that for a couple of years. And we realized pretty quick there was a lot we didn't know, and we would spend so much time trying to recruit any agents, help get their business going. And about after a year or two, as they started to become successful, they would leave and go to a bigger company.
Yeah.
They thought, what are we doing? We're kind of spinning our wheels here. At the same time, we'd started getting into investing in real estate. And we came to the conclusion, man, we'd make way more money working for someone else as an agent and focus on our own investments and things. And so we picked up and took a team over to a local brokerage here, an independent brokerage, and kind of operated a team within their company. And we were content to do that. What shifted for us is, several years later, we came across the Exit platform, and we had heard about it from Bob McKinnon. We'd become friends with him through some connections in Lubbock, and people outside of real estate may not know his name, but he's very influential nationally in real estate. Worked at different levels, some of the highest levels of real estate in the last 40 years. But he said, this is the most innovative company I've ever seen. They're doing some new things that have never been in the industry before. And we said, well, that's interesting. He didn't push it on us, but just told us about it. And we kept finding out more. And as we dug into it, we said, this is a really unique opportunity. Somebody's going to do something big with this. And I didn't think I ever wanted to go back into that broker role again, but I just had a lot of peace about it. And we said, man, let's take a shot and see what we can do. And so we bought that franchise, the rights to the Lubbock franchise, back in 2007.
Okay. Yeah. And so that kind of gets us to 2007. And then now y'all are like huge, right? Both from an agent count and I know also kind of from a yearly sales volume standpoint. I obviously was there for a time in the early 2010s, which is crazy to think about that it's been almost 8 years since it actually has been 8 years almost to the day since I first walked in and sat in y'all's office, which is insane to think about. But you've obviously grown and moved locations. Now y'all in that really great location off the west side of town. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like navigating these growth challenges and how, you had that brokerage the first time, you had agents leaving you. How are you avoiding that now, or at least rolling with those punches differently?
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve to it for sure. Real estate's an interesting business, and the brokerage side of it's definitely got its challenges. There's a lot to the growth side. When we started, it was my dad and I and then two other agents that had been partnered with us on some deals. So we had four of us, and you can't really run a real estate business, with four people, but we had, faith other people would come. And in the beginning, we had a lot more time. You could do so many things. And so as we started to have some of that growth and success as people begin to come over, you have to shift some of your processes and things that you're doing, because things you had time for in the beginning, you sure don't have time for as you get busier. And one of the hardest things is building a real estate business too, is typically the person that owns it and the broker is also participating as a realtor. And that's what's paying the overhead, is they're taking their sales, we're taking our commissions we're earning and putting those back to pay the rent, pay the insurance, the marketing, all the things it needs. But as you get more agents, they need time, they need training, they need help. You can't, and you got to find that balance. So I need to find enough deals to keep us going, and then also ability to help these guys. And as you have more success, eventually, we get to points where we can't sell ourselves. We need to be a full-time broker, and just navigating those things for sure were challenging. And then as we knew we hit our constraints, our initial building we rented was 4,500 square feet. In the beginning with four of us, people said, "You're crazy. Why do you have all this space?" Well,
I remember that. Yeah.
I think we stayed there 9 years.
Yes. Yeah.
By the end, we had people in the hallways and new people coming. So we don't have a place to put you yet, but we're working on it. So we built our freestanding building that's just short of 13,000 square feet. But to say, okay, we were out of space, we need something bigger, then you look at the cost. Well, how do you navigate this, and how much growth will that bring? And some of that, you just kind of have to step out of faith and say, if you build it, I hope they come.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I got on board there, there was like, I was one of the last few that got an office at the old building. And then, then it became sitting in the hallways or, two people sharing a desk or, so, hey, sorry, we don't have a space here, but like, we'll see you on Tuesdays for sales meeting or whatever. I mean, that's just kind of crazy you said something like, you got to just step out in faith. And I think that's something that I feel like listeners here, to this show, really that'll resonate with them is like, you've got to do the work. It's like the building and they will come. Maybe they won't, but you just got to hope that you're doing the right actions. So Can you kind of talk to me about what it's just like to say, okay, we've got to take this leap. Yes, it's scary, but then on the back end of that, like doing the actions that it takes to actually see that through.
Yeah, it takes a lot of faith. There's a lot of gut checks along the way. And as we first started the exploration to say, okay, we need a new facility. Can we build something? We had an idea in mind what we thought it would cost. And of course, in our mind, we're basing it off of residential real estate, which wasn't really accurate, with the commercial construction. So we got a big education in that. And so by the end, as we started getting bids and all the things of what we wanted to do in architecture drawings, you say, oh man, this is going to be more debt than we've ever taken on in our life. And so there was a lot of difficult decisions and meetings as we look at this, say, okay, well, what would we have to sell? What if the economy changes? What about this one? And just try to plan for every scenario. One of the benefits we did have, though, is even at that point, had been investing in our residential properties long enough. We had enough equity and things to fall back on to say, if this really goes bad, we have equity, we can get out of something else and throw at this if we need to. And it kind of a safety net. And so we pulled the trigger, jumped out in faith. And really, even before we ever moved into the new building, we had lots of people coming just from that visibility and exposure and seeing the momentum we had, saying, I'm ready to join you guys. And we're like, okay, we'll be there hopefully soon to have a spot for you.
Awesome. Well, that actually this is a nice segue to one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because obviously you have your own experience in, investing in real estate. You run the business as well. And like you said, this allows you, investing in real estate allows you the opportunity to take on a risk you might not otherwise have had because you had that equity and that fallback plan. Talk to me a little bit about the importance in your own mind and in your own journey of what it's been to have real estate kind of in your back pocket at any given time to tap into that equity. And if I'm a business owner and I'm listening to this show, or even just talking to me, I am a business owner right now. How can I get into that kind of a thing where real estate can kind of be my avenue to explore other business opportunities? And how can I marry those two things together?
Yeah, no, that's good questions. The thing we found, since 2004, we've been investing for a decent amount of time in this is your big variable in there is time. It's not a get rich quick thing. It really is investing and watching this grow. You're building equity over time. And that's so much of what we're seeing, unless you're just paying cash, it's not necessarily coming back to you in cash. And cash flow isn't our most important thing, but it's that equity you're building.
Right.
So a typical property that we buy, our preference now is to put it on a 15-year note, a shorter amortization. So each month you've got a significant drop in that loan. At the same time, that property's going up in value. And in a normal market in Lubbock, maybe that's 5%, 3%, 5%, something like that. The last couple of years, we're seeing 15%, 18%.
Yeah, it's insane right now.
Just really, so you're seeing it a lot faster. That won't last long term, but we're in a window of that for sure with short inventory. But either way, even in normal appreciation, you see it growing fairly quickly. The very first property we bought was a little 800 square foot condo, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, something easy. We stick our toe in the water and say, man, if we just fall on our face, we're not going to lose a lot of money. We paid $49,500.
Yeah.
So fast forward to today, I'm actually this week will have finished a make ready on that, and I'm going to put that property on the market.
Oh, okay.
And not that I typically sell. Typically, I'm going to buy and hold long term. I'm just selling it because of it's a condo. There's some things with the HOA and stuff that just make it a little more difficult.
Sure. And you've held on to it for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time, yeah. So we're not necessarily buy it and then sell after a while. Most of ours we buy and keep, but this one made sense to turn it and put that into something else.
Sure.
But that property, I'm going to put it on the market. We paid $49,500. It's going to go on the market for $135,000.
Yeah.
And the reason being, I just sold another one of those condos a couple doors down, and it sold for 132.5.
Yeah.
And so we had a real good feel for the value, but it just give you an idea in that window how much the appreciation is done. And so long term, that's the big thing. It's just not a quick turnaround thing. But if you're going to hold it, the values are going to keep going up. Right now, it's a huge hedge against inflation, which we're seeing a whole lot of.
Yes.
Record highs.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of value to it. But as you build that equity, anytime if you had to, you could go back and borrow against that. If we've got a property that's paid off, you can get a line of credit, so you can leverage that for so many things. We use some of our properties that are paid off to have a line of credit to use that to purchase the next ones with cash and get more favorable terms. But it just opens up a lot of avenues. So like for us building our freestanding building, that was a massive deal. Well, when we go to the bank and say we've never borrowed something like this, they didn't ask for a profit and loss on my business. They didn't care what our revenue was. They said we know your investments. Go build what you want to build.
Yes, and that's the key right there. If you're listening to this episode, well, I hope that one of the takeaways you get is that having sound, business practices, banks and things like that, they'll notice that. And in particular, sound investments like in real estate, you can leverage that, maybe not just for the money that it is, but for the respect and the experience that it gives you. And then you're able to walk into a bank and say, because I guarantee, if you hadn't had that real estate portfolio, that banks would have been, hey, where is your P&L and where is your
for sure
all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's really a sound way to do things. And I think, like you said, hedging against inflation. I mean, I think we can all feel that right now for sure.
For sure.
So yeah, well, talk to me a little bit. Now, this is going to be maybe a question you've thought about a lot. Maybe no one's ever asked you this question. I don't know. There's obviously a ton of realtors in this current market. When I got in, there wasn't it's not what it was today. I got in right before the mass entrance of real estate agents. What's it been like to manage this somewhat unprecedented boom in this industry? And how are you kind of doing your part as far as educating these new people that are trying to start this career, empowering them and setting them up for success, trying to be that leader that they need to be, all while navigating hey, there is only so many homes on the market, but there's all of these agents. How do I help my guys stand out, to give them the best fighting shot at success?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have about 1,600 realtors in the Lubbock MLS right now. So yeah, it's grown. It's in any time. I think in any market when real estate's doing well and people hear, oh, maybe I should jump in on that.
Yeah,
and real estate also has a lot of turnover. Nationally,
yes.
And we see the same thing in Lubbock. Some of the
sure
people that when I started were. And the movers and shakers, some of them don't even live here anymore.
Right.
Or retired or whatever. Or
I only did it for 2 years, so.
Yeah, so you see a lot of changes, a lot of shifts. It's always top heavy. It's there's a group at the top that are doing the bulk of the transaction, but there's always room for new people. It's never like everything's spoken for. It's somebody that comes in and hustles, they can carve out a niche for themselves. So we see that all the time. One of the false narratives I hear is, okay, well, the inventory is so short. There's only so many. If there's 400 active listings, but you have 1,600 agents, well, that's only 1 out of 4 agents can have a listing. How can you make a
and that some agents are doing 20 deals in a month. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so people assume the inventory level tells a story. Really, all that's telling you is how much is the leverage shifted to the seller side in negotiations. But the thing we saw in 2020. And continued through 2021, even though our inventory was low, we were still having record number of sales each month. So we still had new listings come in. We just sold them all each month. So we didn't necessarily gain more inventory that was sitting there, but our actual number of units we sold went up.
Okay.
And so everybody was making good money. And then you have this kind of appreciation. They're getting paid more on each deal, and sellers are doing better on each deal too. So it was good all around.
That's the thing, because I've heard that narrative many times before. In fact, I've probably been one of the ones saying that narrative too, right? And that's true. Looking at the inventory is just at any given time how many homes are on the market, but then there'll be 30 closings in a day, or a lot more actually, and then that many more homes will just go on the market that same day. So you got to look at the right metrics to be able to get that. So talk to me about what you're doing and what your day-to-day looks like now. And now as you've kind of transcended, because I feel like there's a state in every business where the leadership has to kind of transcend from really working and being an agent or, working in the business to where they have to work more on the business, and their day-to-day becomes more empowering the people that are, doing the deals or what have you in your situation. So talk to me about that kind of transition and then what that looks like for you.
Sure. So for sure, we definitely transitioned that direction and had to the last several years. So I don't do sales myself unless I'm buying something or representing maybe one of my brothers and something that they're buying for investment property. But the general home buyer that, maybe we took care of 10 years ago, if they call in, I'm sending them to one of my agents to take care of them, referring those guys out. My day-to-day is more, like you said, focused on the agents. What do they need? How do we make them successful? The thing I think we have to ask ourselves every day is, how do I add more value for my people? Because they're there by choice. They're, as you had mentioned before we started, they're 1099 independent contractors. They're not employees. We're in partnership in this deal. And so real estate kind of has its own unique dynamic in that. And as much as anything, my agents are my customers, even more so than the actual buyers and sellers in the deal. So I've got to continue to offer value to them. They're there by choice, that they want to be there. And we give them the platform to be successful and in a place they just enjoy coming to work. So my focus is the training we do, training. We actually had it this morning. Every week we'll have a training event of some kind that we put on. Every Tuesday we'll have sales meetings. It also has some kind of training component, updating on what's going on in the market. And then our franchise will have trainings. There'll be other speakers we'll bring in, but also looking at the overall health of the company. How are we doing financially? Or the things we're investing in, the marketing we're doing, is that the best place, to invest those dollars? And just making sure that people have the resources they need, and everybody's needs are different. The new agent coming in just with their license, they need a lot of training, a lot of help to get their feet on the ground, where somebody that's done this for 10 years, they still need help, but it's a different kind of help. So being there and having enough staff and people to help keep these guys going.
Sure. And I know obviously real estate is kind of its own beast, where yes, you have these agents that work at your brokerage, but they are kind of their own boss in a sense because they are a contractor. Can you just talk to me a little bit about, like, what do you see? There's principles that I've taken from my time in real estate and I've applied here. And so that's good. Even though it was kind of its own thing, there's stuff that I learned on that journey that I'm using here. What do you see as like the number one, like the kiss of death? All right. Like, what is the quality that you see that's like the worst thing somebody could have if they want to try to succeed in the business?
I think for most people, they don't put the work in that it takes. And sometimes somebody comes in, they've gone through all the education, the licensing test, they pass the exam to get their actual license from the state, and say, well, here I am. Where's the business? Why isn't my phone ringing? And maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect of, okay, now you're legal to do it, but that doesn't mean it's going to fall in your lap. You have to go out and get that business. You got to work the systems. And it's what I'll try to explain to new people is you're building momentum. And if you picture something that's at an absolute still or absolute stop, it takes a ton of momentum just to get any movement, and then to build up speed. Once you're at a good speed, it takes way less energy just to maintain that speed, or even to increase. It takes less energy than it does to get started.
Yes.
And they have to really have that long-term outlook of, and it may be 2, 3, 4, or 5 months before you get that first check-in.
Yes.
And then you may go another month without one, and it becomes way more consistent as you go, and it gets a lot more profitable. But I always tell them, if all you could ever make in real estate is what you make in the first year, there wouldn't be anybody in the business.
Right.
And it's like most businesses, there's just that lead time to really hitting that tipping point.
Yeah.
Where it really takes off, and either people don't put the work in or they're not patient enough to let it work.
I'll say, my first year in the business, I think I made like $16,000, which I went in full, I went in full time from day one, because that's just how I am. And, I mean, it was rough. I mean, 16 grand nowadays with inflation and stuff would be completely unlivable. But even then in 2014, that was rough. But for 4 months, like you said, like I think I got in April or May of that year. And then I didn't do my first deal until September. And then my next deal was like the very beginning of November. And then the next deal was like just like a month or two after that. And so then it started becoming that momentum shift. So I agree. I think it's the expectation. And that translates to so many businesses, right? It's like, hey, I'm doing this thing now. Come and support me. But put in the work, put in the time, build the momentum. I love the example of constantly pushing, and like you can use the same amount of energy, assuming you can sustain it long term, the same amount of energy that you use to get you started when you're 3 months in, you're gonna just like blow past people.
Yeah.
So that was the negative quality. Now let's do the inverse of that. What's like the best quality that you look for when you're talking to new agents and you want to bring them on board, or the ones that are indicative of the most success?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's really difficult for us in the beginning to predict somebody's success because we have such a variety of people, and some have strengths that you think, man, that's going to really make this path a lot easier. Maybe they know a ton of people. I've lived here my whole life. You think, man, great. But then they don't get out there and let people know what they're doing. You think, well, they knew all these people, but they didn't do anything with it. And on the flip side, I've had people move into Lubbock and say, I don't know anybody, but then they really hustle and become successful. So it's hard to, pinpoint one outside characteristic. As much as anything, it's probably that inner drive.
Yeah, the hunger.
Somebody that just says, man, I'm not going to be denied. This is where I'm headed, and I'll do whatever. I'll move mountains to get there. Those people are typically successful and do real well. And like I said, we've seen so many examples of that. We want to give everybody the opportunity, assuming they're a fit, with our culture. And when I say that, I mean somebody that's going to treat people with integrity, do the right things. We don't want just any salesperson. We want good people.
Sure.
They'll help build our brand the right way. But those can look completely different. They've got people with all different backgrounds, different ages, talents, and gifts, and they can all be successful in their own right. And even as they are successful, their businesses look really different.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the big indicators. They really have that drive, that want to be successful and going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah, I love that. And I've seen, like you said, people that just moved to town and then they just kill it. And it's because they're leveraging that momentum of everything else going on in their life, of new town, new city, new, spouse job, new school for kids. And so everything's just new. So they're just embracing it. Yeah, I would like to know from your perspective, because obviously real estate is a sales game, as most businesses are. I think one of the best things that I did for this business, and that I see other businesses do that are successful, is they understand the value of sales in their company, right? And like in real estate, like that's literally what it is. But like even here at the agency, like sales is like, if we don't have clients to help, then we don't have a job type of deal, right? And so looking at that as like sales is super important. But with sales comes our good old friend rejection, and no one likes rejection. So I would love to know how you've managed rejection throughout the year, both your times as an agent, in a broker situation, if banks denied you. Like, life is rejection. To live is to be rejected, essentially. So talk to me about that and how you manage that and how you help others manage that.
Yeah, and you're right. You have to kind of get that thick skin.
Yeah.
Say, okay, I've got to get past my own hangups here and put myself out there. And in the beginning, as we were building our own real estate sales, it's tough. It's hard. And there were people who thought, oh man, they'll definitely do business with us. They know us. But it's one thing to know you personally and trust your integrity, but they also, even more important in our business, they need to trust your competence. And some of our family people know, well, I also know they're new. Maybe I'm going to use this person. I know that's been in the business longer. That's difficult. Or, anybody in our business, you have buyers, maybe you're showing. We had one, some cousins of ours, we were showing every weekend for months, just wearing us out. And one day called to send them a new listing. So, oh, well, we met an agent at open house this week, and we just went ahead and signed a contract. And you think, oh my gosh, I've invested I don't know how many hours, especially on the weekend, take time away from my family to help you. You're like, really? But you just have to understand, I can't let that affect me. I got to pick up and go to the next one and leave that one behind. Now that we've shifted to the broker side, it's a difficult balance. Our culture is not very corporate. It's more of a family culture. We really want to invest in our people's lives, not just what can you sell for me, not what can you add to the bottom line, but who are you? How can we help you? How's your family doing? We want to be close with our people and be a company with heart, but you can't care for your people unless you put yourself out there and make yourself vulnerable. And there's times that's difficult. There's been agents I've really cared about and felt like we had a close connection with. And one day I show up to work and they come in and say, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to one of your competitors." You go, "Oh, it just felt like get the knife out of my back."
And that's a form of rejection right there.
It's a form of rejection.
Yes.
And, if they feel like it's a better fit, that's totally in their right.
Sure.
But it's hard not to take that personally to say, what did I do wrong? Is there something I missed?
Sure.
Maybe it just wasn't a good fit. Who knows? But you have to be confident enough in what you offer to say, hey, we just got to pick up and keep going. And if they needed to be on a different path, man, God bless them in that. And that's difficult because the emotional reaction, you want to respond and be like, well, we don't need you, or, how could you do this to us, or whatever. But instead, it really got to handle it the right way. So, man, I wish you the best. I hope it's good. If it doesn't work out, maybe we can do something, or hopefully we can do deals together anyway in the future, because they may be an advocate for you down the line. And I've had some of those guys come back and say, I got promised the moon and the stars from this other company. When I got there, that wasn't the reality. Would you have me back? Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
But
no bad blood. Yeah.
And people, it's easy for them to look at a company like ours where we are today and think, oh, it must have been easy, or everything goes tremendous. Even today, things don't always go our way. We still take our hits all the time, and you just have to know that's part of the business.
Yeah. And honestly, as you grow, and this isn't to be discouraging, but as you get bigger, the rejections just get that much harder and heavier and that much more impactful. But it's okay. You learn to roll with the punches. I think one of the biggest, I've said this many a time, and I believe I've said it on the show before, and I think you'll probably agree with me on this, but I always feel like the phrase, it's not business, it's personal. I always feel like that's a little bit of a load of crock, if I'm being just quite honest, because it's not, because when it's your business, it is personal. Like I'm sorry, maybe this is a toxic trait, but like my personal identity is tied to this business. Like if it fails, I'm going to take that personally. And if it succeeds, I take that personally. So every time I get rejected, it's personal, regardless of whether the intent is there or not. It doesn't really matter. It's all about the perception. And so, I mean, is that something that you kind of agree with there? And if so, like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of scenarios that phrase is just a justification for somebody. I want to do this. Even in their own minds, I think this is probably not the right thing, but I'm going to justify it. Say, well, it's not business, it's personal.
Right.
And I've heard that excuse from people that maybe we did a lot of things outside the scope of our role to help them. And then they go, oh, well, I'm going to repay you by leaving and doing this. And I'm going to one of your competitors and like, but
you take it personally.
It's hard not to, because like you said, with your business, you put your heart and your soul into it. And it's particularly the relationships, people you really cared for and care about. That's difficult to see.
Right.
But I think you just have to step back and say, everybody's on their own journey. I don't know what's the best. I don't always know the best thing for me, much less for you, for your business. If that's where they feel like they need to be, man, God bless them in that. Sure. And the thing I really had to come to in our business, in the beginning, when you've got a handful of agents and you're losing one, that's a big hit.
That's a huge hit.
That's harder, and it can shake your confidence. Like, well, are we going to make it? How much of our revenue is that? All these things. Yeah. And I kind of had to step back at one point and say, this agent, Joe Smith, whoever that's walking out, they're not my provider. They may have helped bring in some revenue, but the Lord is the one that's providing for. He's the one making sure our needs are met. He's going to continue to be that, whether it's through this person, that person. Sure. All I can control is my activity. Yeah. He's going to give the results. So if I keep doing the right things consistently, I just believe we're going to have the right people and the results we need. And it allows me to have the grace to extend to these guys that maybe did something I didn't like, to say, hey, man, I hope it works out great for you. Go in peace. I'm going to keep doing my thing. You do your thing. Yeah.
And I think to expound upon what I was saying there of like it's not business, it's personal, but it is personal thing, or it's not personal, it's business, but it actually is personal. If you take it personally, like just being able to shake that off. Like it's okay at the end of the day, it's okay if it is personal, but having that skill, because I think where I was kind of going with that, and what you alluded to there is like, when somebody says it's not personal, it's just business, then it almost kind of like makes you question, well, I felt more, that hurt me more, but then they're almost trying to soften the blow and say that I like, it shouldn't be taking this personally, but I am. And then you kind of feel gaslighted and all these different things. Right. And so being able to say like, hey, it's okay if you take it personal. That actually, I think that helps with the rejection, because it happened to me in real estate. It's happened to me after real estate. Like, again, to live is to be rejected, but being able to just take that and then shake it and move on, I think is just extremely important. So yeah, it's fascinating. I always love to just talk with people and see how they're dealing with that. Cause I mean, every from banks to, I mean, even, getting into relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, things like that. That's rejection city right there. So anyway, this isn't the podcast about rejection though. So we'll move on. Alex, I know you're probably chomping at the bit to ask a question or two. So if you have something to throw Russell's way.
Sure. Yeah. So we just bought our first house in, last year, I guess.
Yeah.
Man, it's been flying by. I'm not very well versed in the real estate world in general, but I would like to get your input on being somebody who is deeply ingrained in that world to somebody who might be looking to buy a house or something like that. What is your best advice when looking for a house, especially in the climate right now? I know that it's dramatically changed in even a year's time. Yeah. So just from a business perspective, how would you go about telling somebody looking to buy a house, or what would you tell them, I guess?
Sure. Well, congratulations. First off, your timing was really good. A year ago, the prices have already appreciated, substantially since then, and the rates this year have gone up.
The rates are bad now.
Dramatically. So you're in a good position. So
yeah, we dodged a bullet. That's what our realtor was telling us. She said, man, you got in right at the right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great timing. Even I say that's great timing. It is great timing. It's very beneficial versus trying to do it today. But at the same time, you can't necessarily time the market. Mm-hmm. And we've invested in properties, in all these different years, different markets, buyers markets, sellers markets, all different times. I don't think there is a bad time. I think sometimes we can get a little over focused on how do I time this market in anything you try to do. But it's really doing it consistently, at least from the investor side. But if you're a first-time buyer and you're looking to get in, I would encourage people. It's a difficult market on the buyer side because we're short on inventory, and it can be frustrating. You make offers, get outbid, look again, make an offer, get outbid. And so we see some buyers get that fatigue and say, "Oh, forget it, I'm just going to rent."
That rejection, right?
Yeah, and it is rejection. But I would say, it's worth it in the long run to keep pushing forward, even when the circumstances are frustrating. I don't think rates are going to drop back to where they were. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball either, but everything points to rates continuing to rise.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people ask me, well, what about the bubble we're building? When are prices going to drop? We don't have a bubble. Yeah. I don't foresee prices dropping. I think what's going to happen is we're not going to stay at the growth we're at now, where we're seeing 15, 18%, and it depends on the neighborhood you're in, but you're seeing really, really high appreciation. As this market cools down, that will taper back, and we'll go back to probably more like 5%, what we've historically seen for appreciation, but there's no bubble to burst.
Yeah.
There's no massive amount of foreclosures like there were in 2008, 2009.
Yeah. People have been talking about the bubble, though, since I was in there in 2014, and it hasn't burst at this point. So,
no, and I don't think it will. I think that's just they're using prior information from the real estate bubble that had happened,
and the
with
laws
the subprime loans,
so much,
and the dynamics are completely different. People have so much more equity in their homes now, good lending practices. So I would encourage somebody, if you want to buy, it can be a little frustrating, but it's worth the effort to do that. And what you buy today, you'll look back like where you are, Alex. You look back a year down the road and go, I can't reproduce what I could get then at that price or that rate. So it's worth the trouble. Rents, I was just reading an article from an economist before I came here. He said rents have gone up so much recently, I think across the nation, at just historic levels. And when you're a renter, you just don't have any control, over that. We've raised, even with our property management company, we're managing, I think, 440 rental units today. And we've had to go through everything to really stay on top of that. Of anybody that's month to month on their lease, okay, how much should we raise this? We don't necessarily want want to go to the full market, maybe we want to leave the tenant some benefit, but we also got to work for our owners to help them
Sure.
recoup their property taxes are going up, insurance is
Yep.
going up.
Everything's going up. Yeah.
And so a lot of our tenants, have seen higher rents, and I think that's going to continue. So there's just so much benefit in owning the home. I think it's worth the extra trouble. There's a little less to choose from. That's true. And as far as strategically to get an offer accepted, you really have to be on top of the process. You can't wait till you find a house. Say, well, let me see if I qualify. No, you have to have a pre-approval letter ready then. You have to know your clear path forward, and hopefully have a good realtor to help you navigate that process, because it's not the easiest process right now.
Sure.
But it's worth the trouble. That would be my advice.
Awesome.
Sure. Good
Well,
advice.
I got in when the interest rates were 2.2, so I bought in right during the pandemic. So right at the summer of 2020. So I'm coming up on 2 years, and my home is already. My home actually had $14,000 of equity just on day one. It actually
Wow.
raised $14,000 higher than what I bought it for, and it had been completely remodeled. So it wasn't like a fixer upper. I just walked in on day
That's
one with
great.
that, and now it's like I think it's worth about 175. And I paid like 120.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna see. Yeah.
So it's I've been really tempted to like pull out and get something different, but I was just talking with a mortgage broker the other day, and the rates are like at 6 something now, or close there too, or something. So I was like, I don't want to touch that. But talk to me a little bit as we're wrapping up. We kind of have one recurring segment on this show, and we call it tic-tac-toe, or tip, tactic, total domination. So I would like to know, what's one tip or piece of advice you would share with others?
Just like general.
Yeah, just like business advice, anything like that. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things I've learned the last 2 decades, being in the real estate industry from all different levels, but particularly as a business owner, is it typically doesn't come down to, I made this one great decision this one time, or I won this huge battle. It's really in the day-to-day. It's in the small things. It's doing the right things consistently over time that make the difference. It's not flashy. It's just being there, and it's working.
Yeah.
It's not, well, hey, I've reached this level. Maybe I should be taking a bunch of time off, or put my feet up a little bit. It's having that drive to keep going, be the best we can be, use the talents, abilities we've been given, for their best return. But it's typically in the small things that we know we need to do, making ourselves do those things, and doing the important things. Maybe there's some prioritization there, but really doing the right things consistently. And the people that do that in our business, we see the results from it.
Sure. What's like a tactic, something tangible that you would tell people that you do that sets you up for success? Some people have said, like, I take cold showers in the morning and stuff like that, because we've had a few savages on the podcast.
Oh, man, I don't want to do that. No.
Yeah.
I think for where I'm at, and if there's a lot of business owners, I think they could probably relate to this. Most days, there are more tasks or things I would like to accomplish than what I've got time to do, beyond just whatever demands are going to come up during the day. Whether that, some of those are good demands, agents needing help on a deal that's gonna help all of us with revenue. Some of those are not good demands. Maybe it's a telemarketer, or a vendor wanted to sell you this, or I just need 15 minutes. I don't know how many emails I get a day. I just need 15 minutes of your time for this little conference. Like, no, whatever. But I think we all have, there's typically more things or more demands for our time than what we've got. And so one of the things I will try to always keep a list, to kind of use the Stephen Covey method. I've got a list that I'm looking at all throughout the day, and it's in quadrants of what's important and urgent.
Yes.
What's just urgent, but it's not important, that can be set to the side. And so I've got things organized so I can really, if I've got 10 things I want to accomplish today, but I only end up having time to do 5, well, I want to start at the most important.
Yes.
Work my way down. And if I have time to get to those, man, that's great. And if I don't, a lot of those things end up eventually taken off the list altogether, because you start to say, how important is this really? Or let's give this to a staff member,
delegation,
or somebody else. But I think being able to prioritize and spending some time, and some of the advice I've got from our franchise leadership, spend some time at the end of the day just looking, okay, where are we at? What have we got done today? What is tomorrow going to look like? And just, even if it's 5 minutes, 2 minutes, just getting my priorities in line for the next day. So when I get there, sometimes before I've gotten to work, my phone's blowing up, emails blowing up. Well, if I already have that lined out, I can jump in wherever I need to be and at least have some path started for the day.
Perfect. And last one is total domination. What does total domination look like to you? So like success, like what is that ultimate vision of success for you?
That's a good question. I'm really looking at questioning some of those things now. You know, in the beginning, as you build a business, you're just wanting to get to break even. Then you want to be profitable. What if we can hit this number or this threshold? And it's you know, if we can climb this mountain, that mountain, you get to these certain areas. I think now as we've had more success, I don't know that there's ever enough to say, oh, this number means this, that number means that. I think for me, my focus, and I think for my dad too, I think our focus shifted a little bit that maybe it's less about the numbers and it's more about the influence. Who have we helped? What's the significance? What does this mean? Hopefully our agents have really helped people in their real estate needs, because that's an emotional process. Yeah. It's a big purchase. Even if it's an investment side, it's not a lot of emotional tie. It's something very important to their life. For me, I want to look at, as our agents that are spending so much of their time and their career with us, do they have a good place to be? Just a place they enjoy, and just have a place where they feel valued and loved beyond just what do they produce, but hey, we actually care about it for who they are. That's what I want to do. A
legacy play, right?
Yeah.
So what is the legacy I'm leaving behind? For sure. All right. Well, as Alex fires up the rollout music, I'm going to let you kind of plug yourself and exit and tell us where to find you, how to get a hold of you, your team, and what you're kind of looking for. Are you bringing on new agents right now? All that fun stuff. So,
all right,
where's yours?
All right. Well, we're Exit Realty of Lubbock. We're on the West Loop of Lubbock's 2405 West Loop, 289. You find us online. It's exitlubbock.com. Or give us a call. It's 806-771-3900. We have about 135 agents right now. We're second in our market as far as units sold and volume. So we got a good sales staff. I take more pride beyond the numbers, more pride just who they are as people and the integrity they'll treat you with. Really put your needs above anything they're doing and take good care of our customers. But yeah, we're definitely out there to help people, and we have a lot of agents that we spend a lot of time specifically training on the investment piece. So people that want to use real estate as an investment vehicle, we have a lot of resources to help with that. We do a quarterly investor seminar, just free seminar to help people learn how does this work, what does it look like. We are always adding new agents in this industry and trying to find the right people. We're not looking just for numbers, but find the right people that have similar values.
Perfect. Well, Russell, thank you so much for your time, man. I really enjoyed talking with you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to it, whatever channel you're listening on, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thanks, Ryker.
Thank you.